Thanks to everyone for joining us today. I am Dr. Laura Hendricks. I am the Family and Consumer Economics Specialist here for University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture Cooperative Extension Service. We're coming to you today from Extension's Zoom studio here on our campus. And I'm so excited to have with us a practitioner, many years in the field, talking to you today about investing for retirement plans and pitfalls. We have Deferred George, who is with the Arkansas Securities Department. He is the Investor Education Coordinator and Senior Securities Examiner. He also has 30-plus years on the broker-dealer side of the industry. So please join me in welcoming David George.
Thank you, Dr. Hendricks. All right, my name is David George. I'm with the Arkansas Securities Department. This is my second career. My first career was basically 30-plus years as a broker, as compliance, and as branch management. Right now, with the Securities Department, I've been given the chore of going out and talking to people about retirement, and I know I'm speaking to the choir, but this is basically how I go about talking to people that could be new high school graduates, new technical graduates, or even from college. So, I can no longer speak specifically about retirement plans. That's part of my deal when I came to the Securities Department, but I will be glad to answer or try to answer anything that you bring up. I brought a couple of resources with me that we use quite a bit. One that came to the commissioner and eventually to me, and that's this book right here, which is from the Insured Retirement Institute. It comes out once a year, and it basically covers everything that you'd want to know about retirement. Also, in our handouts, we utilize quite a bit from the Department of Labor. This one is the top 10 ways to prepare for retirement. FINRA, 5 tips to keep your finances from going off a cliff. Time is on your side. It's a real quick item that we also use. And then here again from the Department of Labor, getting help with your investments and maximize your retirement investments. One of our mainstays, and y'all have probably seen this before, is taking the mystery out of retirement. A nice little workbook. We hand this out to everybody and encourage them to at least go online and look at it if they do not take their copy and go home and use it. I brought one other item, and this is something that I carry over from being at the broker-dealer. It's a free subscription to pensions and investments. And you can either contact Dr. Hendricks and she'll get a hold of me, or let me know at the end of this, and I'll go ahead and get you the information on that. This morning before I left the office, I was looking at one item that really caught my eye. This is from Wealthy Retirement, an email that I get daily, and it's a scary $275,000 retirement bombshell. And basically what it's talking about is what it will cost you for your medical insurances over the period of your retirement. That is scary, considering that most people have somewhere between $375 and on up for their retirement. Subscribe to something called KISS, Keep It Simple Stupid, and that really helps out with the people that we're dealing with, since we don't know really who we're going to be dealing with. Okay, I've got to put this out. Views presented today are strictly the views of the speaker, me. They're not the views of the Arkansas Securities Department, nor are they the views of the Arkansas Securities Commissioner. These are strictly my ideas, and they come from 30-plus years in the industry and doing this and supervising this, the layout of different retirement plans for different individuals. This is just a little bit about the Securities Department, what we do. Now, what is your plan for retirement? That's all a very individual type of item. It is not a one-size-fits-all. As a practitioner, you need to go out and you really need to take each individual in and determine what kind of plan that they will need. From very simple, we've seen people come in from car wrecks that have gotten some sort of settlement, and it has been a chore in the past to keep some financial advisors from just putting them in one item, 100% of whatever they have, and these people generally have no idea about investments. So that in mind, let's look at some retirement quotes. Generally what we think about retirement is very positive. So we come up with a couple of quotes. I'm retired, goodbye pension, hello pension. Retirement, when you stop living and work and begin working and living. When in essence, it generally goes to the minus side, and that is, the question isn't at what age I want to retire, and this is where we come in, but at what income. And my favorite is, it's nice to get out of the rat race, but you have to learn to get along with less cheese. So, I do a lot of Googling and going through different websites. This is one actually I inherited, and I wanted to show you how similar it is to one that I just picked up off the current website. 82% of workers are not confident about their retirement. The 36% that have a very low investment amount, 56% really disturbs me. I think that's actually a little low. Those are workers who haven't tried to calculate how much they will need to save to live as they are today and a comfortable retirement. But with looking at that, it's real easy. I think everybody around here, the former firm that I work with, uses something called goal planning and monitoring. Every firm has it. I think Dr. Hendricks has something here that she uses. And basically, it's just a plug in the data and see where you are as to how fit you are for retirement or what you need to do to get there. So we also have a large number of people who admit to having a problem with debt. Now, unfortunately, this is not only your car, your mortgage, it's also your credit cards. And the credit cards are really the most debilitating items we have. I think everybody has seen or read something about this. This one is off of GoBankingRates.com, another very good website that I use a lot and scan through a lot of the different articles. But as you see, the 34% of Americans have no money in savings. Very scary. 35% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. And again, we go back, and it's pretty similar to what we've seen, and this one is a couple of years old. So, the one that really bothers me is the 46% of millennials feel pressure to spend money after seeing posts on social media, which is basically keeping up with the Joneses. And what I like to stress in this is, well, let's look at two friends graduate from high school. One becomes a teacher, one becomes a neurosurgeon. The neurosurgeon calls the teacher and asks him to go out or her to go out for dinner. So the neurosurgeon isn't going to pick McDonald's. So they go someplace that is white tablecloth, very high end, and the teacher is not going to say no. And this is a drop in the bucket to the neurosurgeon. So at the end of the dinner, they pay their tabs, well over $100 a piece, and they go their separate ways. Neurosurgeon, again, doesn't even faze him. With the teacher, he's thrown out a credit card, he's immediately in debt. So it's a very scary item that we're seeing with mainly the millennials. Okay, general information we're going to cover today, and it is going to be very basic, is establishing basic retirement goals, sources of retirement income. I believe this came out, Dr. Hendricks put it out on the web for just to get your interest in here. But these are the items we are going to be going through today. Now, to begin with, you've got to establish goals whenever you're preparing a plan. And like I said, this is very basic. We are keeping it that way because you never know who you're going to be sitting in front of and going through. Generally speaking, when you're establishing goals, you've already assess your current situation via a conversation with the client or with a questionnaire filled out by the client. Unfortunately, clients aren't always that forthcoming with information, especially about their monetary values, their different accounts. So anyway, establish the goals. Be realistic with your goals. Assess the current situation. Make sure that they match up with those goals that you have established. Develop objectives and strategies based on the assessment and based on the established goals. Now, with the establishment of the goals, make sure you do one thing, and that is make sure that you are prepared to change them up and update them as different situations arise. You know, when you get out of school, you've got student loans to pay, you've got possibility of getting a new car, possibility of getting married, getting a house. Anyway, all of these will change your situation and change your need to establish those goals. Okay, once again, initial plans are designed to provide a general assessment and basic course of action to achieve them. Projections are estimates based on assumptions which may or may not be valid over time horizon of the plan. Be flexible. And the nearer to retirement, the more precise your plan needs to be. And I use an example with my 91-year-old mother lives with us now, and I have had hers and my dad's plan since 1985, and it has changed quite a bit. Back in 1985, we were much more liberal. We had much more in stocks and very much less in fixed income and the bond market. As we got nearer to retirement, my dad passed away. My mother needed her income. She needed to know what she was getting. Well, her time horizon is shortening, so we went to more of a fixed income portfolio. She is at last look, and it tightens up even more every month. But at her last statement, she was almost 90% in fixed income. A 91-year-old lady that comes up to me and asks me how much we've got, what do I have to spend, do I need to spend it, and it all works out when you're able to tell her exactly what you've got and you're not watching the stock market go up and down. Right, basically the first thing you need to establish when you are getting into this plan, you need to ask basically what your idea is, or what your client's idea is on their retirement age or the date of their retirement. Again, you need to be flexible, and I'll show you this coming up. You never know what's going to happen in the market. And Dr. Hendricks and I were talking the other day. I know back in 2007, 2008, with the crunch in the high yield markets, my 401k went to a 201k and overnight. And I tell you, it took a while to recover. Fortunately, I had enough time to do it. When you're looking at an older individual, you really do not have that flexibility to go ahead and look at sitting and hoping the market comes back. Okay, when you're looking at a retirement plan, you've got to sit down realistically again with your client and determine how much income will they need in retirement. And the basics are food, utilities, clothing, home, and auto expenses. Everybody's going to have that. Everybody's got to eat. You're going to have utilities. I can tell you that for 30 plus years, I had to wear a suit. And that's basically what I have. But in retirement, I can tell you, I'm going to a lot more jeans, and they cost a lot less than a suit. So that clothing cost is going to come down. Hopefully your home is paid for. Thankfully, my mother doesn't drive anymore. So there is no auto. The insurance, home, auto, and life, you want them, but if you had to cut something out, you could cut that. I would not recommend it, but everybody has to have health care. And again, I go back to the article that I was reading this morning on how much it's going to cost generally for healthcare for an individual in retirement. Right now, we don't know where it's going to go. Right now, we've got Obamacare. The Republicans failed again in their attempt to overthrow that. So, where we go from here, I don't know. If you are lucky enough to be working for a state or a good employer, federal government, whatever, you're going to have the opportunity to maintain health care benefits. Not cheap, but still you're going to have them. Okay, let's look at the children. We don't really think about that in retirement, but as children go to college, get out of college, we're having children later in life, you could still look at the possibility of having to support your children or child. Now, at this point, here again, I guess we're somewhat supporting my mother. Never thought we'd have an elderly individual in our house that was a member of our family. Swore when I got out of college that was not going to happen. But, as the need arises, somebody has to step up. Now, in retirement, you're also going to hope and plan that your client is going to not have a mortgage, hopefully, and not have credit cards any longer. That is part of the plan on getting them to the retirement level. Now, in retirement, a lot of people don't think about this, but I, for one, am not going to sit on the front porch the rest of my life and just watch people go by while sitting in a porch swing. I intend to, I like golf, sailing. A lot of people like to fish, hunt. There are people who like to go to New York and see plays. Whatever it is, a shopping spree, you've got to budget for that. That also comes into your basic retirement plan. And then, of course, you've always got to have your emergency funds. And I can tell you, I've experienced it. We moved back to Little Rock 6 years ago, and 5 years after we bought our house, the 6-year-old large air conditioner blew up in the middle of August in Little Rock. And I can tell you, in Little Rock, in the middle of August, you don't go out and buy a box fan and hopefully live through until the fall and winter. So we came up with the emergency funds to pay for that air conditioner. Same thing could happen if you get a hole in the roof, anything. But be prepared to have some of those emergency funds set aside. I'll get into some graphs here. And these again, this is an Aon, Georgia State University replacement ratio study. Good insurance company, of course, Georgia State University. But they come out with this every so many years. This is the most recent one that I found. Now, what this does is it looks at, in retirement, how much of your salary when you retired are you going to need to maintain the same type of level of living that you have had prior to retirement. Now, if you'll look at this slide, you'll notice the assumptions. This is the perfect retirement. No mortgage, no dependent children, obviously reduced taxes, and no work-related expenses. So, taking a poll of this, of the many people in here, and you see the salary ranges over on the side going from $20,000 to $80,000 annually. So you look, and what is blatantly obvious is the fact that it's going to cost someone in the lower income ranges more to live than it is going to cost somebody in the higher income ranges. And of course, it ranges anywhere from 78% to 94% in the married group. Once again, what we're looking at is the fact that you're going to have to determine how much, based on the last annual salary, how much is that person going to need in retirement. Yet we have not taken into consideration inflation. Now, over the past, since '84, we've been averaging right at 3% inflation. So you've got to adjust what you're going to need in retirement based on what current inflation rate is. And at this point, as you can see, if you're going out and buying that Coke or candy bar that costs you $1 today, based on 3% inflation, in 10 years, it's going to cost you 34 cents more. So instead of buying it for $1 a day, in 10 years, it's going to cost you $1.34, and going out to 30 years, $2.43. So let's put it a little bit more in perspective. This is a $30,000 income today based on a 3% inflation rate. In 10 years, to have the same purchasing power that you have today with a $30,000 income, it's going to cost you $40,000 plus, and you can see in 20 years and 30 years. Now, with the Fed speak and the interest rates rising and everything else, the possibility of us getting a higher inflation rate is pretty good. However, I don't think that we're going to see much more, at least not in my lifetime, much more than 5%. So based on that dollar of purchasing power today, if we go up to 5%, you're going to see another 30-cent increase in that Coca-Cola or candy bar that you're buying today at $1. At 5% inflation rate, it's going to be $1.63 in 10 years. Let's put that a little bit more in perspective, and this is really, some of our examples are pretty extreme, but this is reality. $30,000 purchasing power today is going to cost you at 5%. Inflation rate is going to cost you almost $49,000 in 10 years. Another $19,000 increase over what you're looking at today. It's pretty staggering. However, this is my favorite slide. Back in 1979, I bought a small home and thought I knocked the cover off the ball. I got an 11.9% adjustable rate mortgage, and it fortunately started climbing from that point. I bought it pretty much at the high of the inflation rate. Now that inflation rate, that top peak is 14.8%. So let's go back here, and that 14.8%, if we ever got back to that inflation rate, just multiply those orange bars by 3, and that's what you'd need for that $30,000 of income today if it got up to 14.8%. Now, 1985, I got into the Little Rock, Arkansas bond market. I started selling to institutions, and to get into institutions, you had to have something that somebody else didn't have. I went out and found an 11% one-year CD. At today's rates, you're barely getting 1%. Every bank I went to tried to open up an account, laughed at me, told me they would never invest in something that low rate, not even for a year, and then they hung up the phone. So it was a tough time back then. I wish I had the 11% right now. But you'll see, 1984 to 2014, you're looking at a 2.86% average inflation rate, 3%, and hopefully it's going to stay 3, 4, not over 5. If it goes up to 14.8%, I think all retirement is pretty much gone out the window, unless maybe you're Warren Buffett. All right. You've also got to look at how long you are going to have to fund that retirement. And what we're looking at here are life expectancy probabilities. Of course, you've got to look at it individually also, each one of your clients. You've got to ask them the question, what is the history of your family? You know, my dad lived to be 82, my mother's 91. I guess that says to me that I've got pretty good genes. That doesn't necessarily speak for everybody. There are a lot of people whose parents have died in their 60s, have died in their 50s. Both of my grandfathers passed away in a very, very stressful time back in the recession in their 40s. So, you know, what does that mean to your client? These are probability studies. This is what your insurance companies look at. They hire actuarials to go ahead and do the studies and put these together, and they determine your possibilities of reaching certain ages. Take, for example, the male age 65, has a 41% chance of reaching 85. The female, age 65, has a 53% chance of reaching age 85 and a 32% chance of reaching age 90. Here again, these probability studies, these are much more accurate than supposedly than your averages, throwing out below, who died early and who lives forever. But these are much more accurate. This is what insurance companies base your insurance rates on. Now, let's add in a little, because we were looking at just the life expectancy probabilities of singles. Now, you get a married couple, and this is one I really don't understand, because when I was single, I had a sports car, a dog, and an apartment, and I had fun. I'm married. I have a mother living downstairs, a wife that wants to know every time I go to the ATM why I had to go, where I've been, stop at the store, and when I get home, the dog growls at me. So I guess the language of love is bickering. But anyway, if you're a married couple, and this is true, one of the married individuals has a better chance of reaching an advanced age than if they are single. All right, let's get to the basics, and that's the sources of retirement income. Now, this is one that came out of, actually, I saw this back in my 9th grade economics class. Back then we called it a three-legged milking stool. You lived off generally your employee pension, Social Security, and personal savings. Now, your personal savings can be just what you put aside. It could be coming from, if you came from one job to another, you take whatever you had in a savings plan and you put it into another account, be it generally rolled over into an IRA or something of that nature. My personal savings, for the most part, came from a 401k. I was in the private sector for 30 plus years. Now I work for the state. We have a pension plan. Now, private pension plans are pretty much gone. The estimate is that in the future, you'll see a maximum of 15% of the private sector will offer pension plans. And we don't know what they're going to look like. We've seen pension plans that are underfunded. We've seen pension plans that have been pulled, at least partially, for instance, some of the car companies. And then, of course, we've got Social Security, and we don't know, depending upon when you're born, really how secure that's going to be. All right. This is an example of a pension plan. This is basically the one that we use here in Arkansas, at least for the majority of the Arkansas employees. It is a defined benefit program. You get an annuity payout once you retire until such time as you pass away. They have a formula for it. Ours, fortunately, is vested within 5 years of service. I like that. I'm 64 and a half, and it's my understanding 60 is the new 30. But I'm hanging around till I don't care if it's a quarter coming to me. That's a quarter more than what I had if I stay and invested in 5 years. Normal retirement, as age 65 is basically an historical item that came back from, I believe, Germany back in the Industrial Revolution. Why they picked that at age 65 was a normal retirement, because the average lifespan back then was in the 30s. But it has been carried over and now over into the United States. But anyway, in actuality, and we'll show this slide in a few minutes, retirement is really age 66 or after. But you can see on the last line, the first two words and the last two words are very important. Reduced retirement, penalties apply. If you go out early, you do not get the full benefit. So, sources of retirement. This is your second leg of your stool. Social Security was initiated in 1935. The majority of us, if we have worked full-time for 10 years, we met the 40 credit, which is 4 credits per year, and we are now in the Social Security system. You can see the benefit ages, and the bottom is a delayed pickup of Social Security, which I intend to do. So my Social Security will kick in at 66, but if I don't take it till I'm 70, for those additional years, they will pay me, and I believe it's 8% currently. I don't know how they're going to be able to do that. But I've highlighted 1943 to 54. Those are really your baby boomers, and they go out full retirement at age 66. So let's look at this slide, and I just pulled this out of my IRA, my IRI book that I just showed you about. And this gives you a better idea as to where you stand in retirement. Now, if you were born in 1960 or later, you no longer will retire at 66 or 66 in so many months. You're going to be retiring at 67. Now, if you determine you want to go out early, and you can go out at 62, my wife went out at 62. She took her full retirement at age 62. She took her Social Security at age 62. So we had to go in, and this again is part of the whole picture of the retirement plan. You have to determine if it is worth it with one, and generally the male in a marriage at this age that was the number one breadwinner. So my wife chose to take a 25% deduction, and she has gone to her Social Security at 62. She's now 64 and a half. I'm not going to show that 25% reduction, I can tell you. Anyway, that'll give you a better idea as to what you will lose. 60 and later, if you go out and retire at 62 and take your Social Security, you will take a 30% hit on what you would normally get if you stayed till 67. Okay, these are Social Security benefit changes for 2017. And here again, this all goes into it's just another piece of the puzzle of putting together a retirement plan. Concerns and issues with Social Security. It's critically underfunded. It is projected to be depleted in 2034, Medicare in 2030. Well, it's not going to be totally depleted, but it will look totally different than that. These numbers, these dates have not changed that much over a long period of time. Causes, changing demographics, increasing life expectancies, lower worker to retiree ratio. And we can put that into perspective real easily. The baby boomers have always been the largest generation. Millennials are a smaller generation. Millennials will be paying for Social Security for the baby boomers. Now, the nice thing is that as of a couple of weeks ago, they put out an item that said no longer are the baby boomers the largest generation, the millennials are. Now, that's two causes. The baby boomers are dying, getting older, and they're passing away. The millennials are getting immigration from different companies or different countries that are from physicians, technical skilled individuals, but it's all legal immigration. And when they become legalized citizens of the United States, they then become Social Security eligible and will be paying in Social Security taxes. So that hopefully is going to balance out in the future. What we got though is fixing the problem. Used to be in election years, you wouldn't see this. Raising taxes and lowering benefits, that's not going to get you reelected, ever. At this point, that's pretty much up in the air. All we know is, the bottom line, significant changes have to occur. Okay, this is unfortunately the way we save. Now, I'm an out of sight, out of mind type of person where you take a certain amount of money, take it out of your paycheck, and never look back. Unfortunately, what this is when we get really comfortable with the economy, we quit saving. When we see a recession coming on, everybody really gets afraid, and they start really saving again. And it's just an up and down depending upon what the economy does. But as you can see, the low here is 3% saving in 2006, back when everything was really going, and the high was 2012 at 665. Now that brings up another item. Any good financial advisor, any good retirement planner will tell you that a minimum of 10% needs to be saved. So, you can look, these are the more stable economies in the world, and look where the U.S. is. 4.9% is the average personal savings rate, compared to France, who apparently knows what they're doing, 15.8%. And here again, Germany is the one where we should be, 10.6 or better. This slide here gives you an idea. This again is the perfect retirement or perfect average household debt on the right, because that does not include people who have mortgages or who do not have mortgages, do not have student loans, and do not have any kind of credit card debt. So I still think, we had this discussion a couple of days ago, I still think that student loan debt could be a little low. And I go to a story where here recently we had an NFL player who went from, his contract was up, so he hopped from one team to another for a large amount of money. The first thing he did was write a check for his brother's master's level student loans, $80,000. Now, of course, he didn't go to the University of Arkansas either, but it starts getting up there, and $34,703, that's at least average for a state-supported institution. And you can see on the left-hand side the average net worth by age group, and basically it says what we all know is as you get older, you should have more savings. And the $1,475, that must be somebody that's just right out of school. And it's probably more their parents' money than theirs. Okay. This is an example, and I took, here again, a state employee, and we'll try to go through this pretty quick. Took a state employee, this is John, he's single, he's age 45, he's been with the state of Arkansas for 10 years, since age 35. His current annual salary is $35,000, non-contributory, so the state is putting all the money in, he is not putting a dime in. Planned retirement date, age 65, don't get it. Replacement ratio, he thinks he can live on 85% of whatever his highest pay is by the time he gets ready to retire. Inflation rate, 3%. Planned retirement years, he's very optimistic. He thinks he's going to live 25 years or to age 90, so he's got a fund between 65 and 90. His savings, total savings right now is $35,000 in a bank CD at an average rate of return of 3%. It's a wash. Inflation is 3%. And currently, he is not saving anything beyond that. So he is living paycheck to paycheck. Now, how does he get something in retirement? Okay, this is his projected retirement income replacement need. It's $35,000 income at 3% inflation for 20 years. And 85% of his ending salary, or at this point, $35,000, he's going to need an average, and that's not starting when he first retires, but that is covering him through until age 90 with the inflation rate. So he is going to need an average of $53,000 plus per year. So you get your pension plan, your Social Security, and that comes up to approximately $40,080 per year. His estimated need is 53 plus, so he's got a shortfall over $13,000. So he's got personal savings. He's looking at helping pay all this with his CD, 3% for 20 years. He's looking at $63,725. Years to deplete at that shortfall of 13,000 plus. he's going to be out of that CD in 5.1 years, leaving him almost 20 years to go of that unfunded deficit. So his retirement income gap, 13,652 times 19.9 years, it's not 25,000. How about a little over $250,000? Now, where is he going to come up with it? Save more, increase your rate of return on savings, adjust your retirement date, or consider working in retirement. Boy, that doesn't sound fun. Now, he's got a gap of 271,000 plus. Solution, save more. So if he puts away $381.59 and we get paid every 2 weeks, state employee, he can put away $381.59 26 times a year, then he's got it covered. Remember, this guy's living paycheck to paycheck. He couldn't even buy ramen noodles if he put away $381.59 26 times a year. So what else do we do? Save more. Okay, now let's go to number 2. Increase your rate of return. Get out of that 3% CD. Go out on that risk spectrum a little further. Get into some mutual funds that are paying you a little bit more money or some other instrument and increase that rate on your savings. So with that in mind, he is now with a 6% on all of his savings, including the $35,000. He is going to need only $224.50 26 times per year. I really still don't think this is going to happen. Now, I try to use extreme examples because that gets people's attention. If it was something that you could just come up with and fund it, nobody would listen. That really wouldn't hit home. So let's go ahead and look a little further. A deferred compensation plan, there are several types of them. This happens to be a 457B plan, which is available for governmental and certain non-governmental employers. But there's several types out there. The traditional version is a tax-advantaged savings. So your contributions are made with pre-tax dollars, which simply means, put it as an example, this is not the way it is right now, but say you earmark $100 per paycheck. Well, in actuality, all they're going to take out right now is $85. So you have deferred that taxation until such time as you retire and you have a lower tax rate. So you can see the contribution limits. There are certain contribution limits. This is the way a state employee here in Arkansas anyway, they take 5% out immediately for the state program. Then we have another program that is the deferred comp program, and you can go up generally and cover up to your 10% or a little lower, depending upon your pay range. Anyway, the deferred compensation plan is another way of helping out. So let's, we got the Roth version in here. This really doesn't help. The Roth version is more for younger people just out of school, taking their first job, low income, so it's really not going to be helping John. Now, let's get back to our example. We're down right now to where he needs to put back $224.50, 26 times a year. If he starts using the deferred comp plan, then we get down to pre-tax contributions at $224.50. His net paycheck reduction in Arkansas is $175.11. So that is about half of what he would have been getting or having to put back with his $381.59. Still not good, okay? So he may not be able to close his gaps totally, but he's going to be able to reduce them. Maybe not with 224, maybe not with 175, but he can start putting something back, and that brings us to a couple of other items. This is one of the best articles I've ever found. It is, it was on, I believe, GoBankingRates.com. Anyway, these are two young men that at age 25 each had $10,000. I don't know where they got it. But anyway, at age 25, Ron decided he might need something. This is the red mark. He might need something between the time he's 25 and 30. So he puts his money in at 30 years old. And without touching that money and not adding to it, compounding annually at 6%, he winds up at age 65. That $10,000 is now worth almost $77,000. Now let's look at Harry in the blue. Harry went in and he put his in immediately at 25 and did the same thing, just left it 6% compounded annually. And he winds up, because he did not procrastinate for 5 years, he winds up with $102, almost $103,000 versus Ron's 77. Quite a difference. Let's look at the real winner here. This is Hermione. Hermione, I believe it's from Harry Potter.
Hermione.
Hermione, thank you. I'm not a Harry Potter fan. I do like her though. She put in $10,000, and here again I go back to out of sight, out of mind. She decided immediately that she was going to put $100 a month, earmark it, to go into that account. So that $10,000 plus $100 a month, compounded at 6% annually, brings her up to almost $295,000. She is the winner in the clubhouse. And a very smart lady that really showed up the guys. 2.9 times over Harry's, I believe, and 3.8 times what Ron was able to make. Okay, so what can you do if you don't have much time? Consider delaying your retirement. Consider a post-retirement career. Okay, let's just get into, these are all very easily explained to anybody. What do you do to cushion the financial impact, to help you get to where you want to be in retirement, to help you get to that retirement plan that you want? You start reducing debt, start thinking about unnecessary expenses. If you go to white tablecloth, go down a step. If you're taking your wife out to dinner. Same thing with cars, same thing with anything else, just bring it down a little bit. Start saving or saving more, utilize your tax advantage programs, take home pay reduction, which is what we just talked about, and pay yourself first. Increase your savings amount each year, even if it's only $5. And with any of your outside monies, get assistance from a qualified financial advisor. That's my thought. These, again, some principles to consider. Investments carry some level of risk, all of them. Even that CD at 3%, because it was only paying 3%, it did not beat inflation. He's not going to have, when he takes it out, he is not going to have the same buying power that he did when he put it in, even with that 3%. Diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Asset allocation, very, very important. Make sure you know your risk. Make sure you know what kind of risk you can handle. And be able to determine on your risk scale how much you want to put in at each risk level. Successful investing requires periodic monitoring and adjustments. Remember that. Always look at it. Okay, who should I work with? What should I know? And again, this is preaching to the choir. There are, according to Dr. Hendricks, there are several people here with qualifications to handle the retirement plans. There are, eventually you're going to have to go to a broker-dealer to buy whatever securities, but be informed about your investments. Work only with licensed registered companies and representatives. Understand the fine print. Have somebody explain it if you don't understand it. Never sign anything until you're completely sure. That's basically where y'all come in. Demand periodic statements and representative reviews. Every broker-dealer is required to give you a statement at least quarterly. If you make a trade in a month, then you get a statement. Be on guard for too good to be true deals. I'm dealing with a lot of people right now that come to me because they were out on a tractor and somebody calls them and says, I got something that's the greatest thing since sliced bread. They buy it, then they come to me when it all falls through the floor and say, what can I do about getting my money back? Nothing. It's gone. All we can do is look at putting a cease and desist order on these people, but they're already gone. So, as we end up today, this is what everybody thinks about in retirement, and this is what our goal is to make this kind of retirement happen for our clientele. It's pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's a beautiful day. It's flowers in a field. It's everything's hunky-dory. But it's all a very individual item. So, what will your road to retirement look like? Will it be a chartered course or an aimless wander? That is up to you and your clientele. It is all a very individualized item. That's it.
Okay, well, I have a couple of questions in the chat here.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel, for taking care of that. Sam says bond mutual funds are sensitive to Fed interest rate increases, which are likely to continue for the next couple of years. Bond laddering is an approach to get a bond level of return without the sensitivity of a bond mutual fund. Are there resources you could recommend that simplify this process or make it easy to invest in a laddered bond structure?
Okay, a laddered bond structure, I'll give you an example here. I had an account, the gentleman had $8 million in bonds. It was in a laddered portfolio. The only time he ever traded it was if something got called, in which in our interest rate environment, everything's been called, or it matured. And a laddered portfolio is simply that you buy something that's 1 year to 30 years out. And every year something's rolling off, and then you purchase something that goes all the way out. And of course, your higher yields are going to be in the longer terms. Now, with the mutual funds, you're correct in the taxation is difficult with a mutual fund. You never know with a mutual fund. It was built for the average individual, not the guy's got $8 million and is throwing off $300 a year. So he can live on that and never has to touch a mutual fund. But a mutual fund is built for people like the average guy, where you are diversified. You have a lot of different bond issues. It could be still a laddered portfolio, but if you own 1% of that bond fund, if something goes under, you only own 1% of that particular issue that went into default. So it is, here again, much more diversified. It is made for the individuals that don't have the multi-million dollars to put in. You have stock mutual funds, bond mutual funds, sector mutual funds. You have a combination of it all. But here again, you also have where a bond matures, a mutual fund doesn't. So they'll always be replacing whatever's in that portfolio. I hope that answered the question.
Yes. And let's see. Do we have any additional questions? Mark, do you see anything else in the Q&A?
I'm not seeing anything right now, but we've got a few minutes left. So yeah, folks, if you have any questions, Q&A or chat, feel free to throw those in. I actually did have a question about these target date funds. I think the idea is your asset allocation changes, you get closer to retirement date.
Right.
Any thoughts on those?
Well, on target date fund, of course, here again, I go back to it's not one size fits all, but a portion of your retirement could be put in a target date fund, basically meaning that you've got a date that you need the money, you've got a date that you're going to retire, and you're going to need the money, and then you'll just reinvest in something else. But that is basically what it is. And here again, a lot of people use the target date funds. I've used some of them, and it just depends on the individual. And I certainly wouldn't put everything in one basket.
There is a question Barb asked in chat. What is your #1 retirement planning tip for consumers?
For consumers, my #1 retirement planning tip, honestly, is to get a good professional to help you put it out. I've tried for sale by owner at one point and realized very quickly how important a realty agent was. And I looked the same way at looking at working with a qualified individual, be it one of Dr. Hendricks's comrades, or be it going to a brokerage firm, whatever, but work with qualified individuals. I've had a cousin nephew of my wife that thankfully pulled the money away from me and decided he could do it himself. A year later, he's asking me to take it back, a lot less, but to take it back. He didn't know what he was doing. He was just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it would stick.
I have one more question that's popped up here, and I don't know if we'll need a short answer because we're almost out of time. Do you know of any retirement pitfalls as it relates to retirement investment / portfolios for an expat retirement? Do we need some clarification on what that means?
Expatriate is someone who lives overseas.
Yep.
Lives in another area. Well, you're going to be looking at putting together a retirement portfolio that basically it's going to be housed in the United States. You have the opportunity to go ahead and invest in international funds, but as for pitfalls, the only pitfall I see in an expat looking at the retirement situation is you don't have the ability to get in front of the person that is handling your retirement. You may not be able to get a hold of them as often as I pick up my phone, and now I've got to have a broker, and it's a friend of mine, and he doesn't like to hear from me because I tell him what I want. He's a lot more conservative than I am.
This article right here, I had a question about this retirement bombshell. We'll see if we can get a copy of that and send that out. Someone had a question about that and about your other resources, and I will make a list of David's resources to share with you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're at the bottom of the hour mark. What else?
Lori, real quick, couple of two questions popped up in Q&A.
Okay.
What are average costs for a fee-only planner to make a plan for retirement?
Okay, well, generally speaking, and this goes cross board with all broker dealers, I can't specify one, but you generally have a fee that ranges from 1% to 3%. 3% to me is way too high as a branch manager. I always would have people coming to me and ask if we can go down to below 1%. I never did not sign off on that. And be aware that for the fee-based accounts, not everybody is fee-based type. I refuse to take my accounts to fee-based because I call the shots and I may trade once a month or once a year. And for the person that had the mutual fund portfolio, laddered portfolio, that's the last person in the world needs to be in there. The only time he trades is, as if he has to. And why would he give me 1% every year of his assets to do nothing?
Okay. Thank you so much. What else, Mark?
That is all.
Okay. Well, thank you all.
See you next month.
Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.